Thanks for listening to the Higher Ed Athletics podcast. Today, I'm joined by Mike Roth, the Director of Athletics at Gonzaga University. Mike, thanks for being on the Higher Ed Athletics podcast.
Yeah, happy to be here.
Well, we just talked about how you're here in Indianapolis in the bubble, and we're recording this ahead of the men's and women's Sweet 16 tournament. I get the impression that here in March every year that some in higher ed, those critical of athletics too, think too narrowly maybe about this idea of what's called the Flutie effect, even though that's a baseball football term. We talk about it in basketball too for the schools. They focus typically on temporary gains in applications or website traffic around the tournaments, but Gonzaga and Butler seem to be different and long-standing case studies. So I was realizing they're both the mascots, the Bulldogs. So I'm thinking we need to change this finally for the sustainable cases like Butler and Gonzaga that change the institutional profiles. We need to just call it the Bulldog effect. So that's what I'm going to refer to it today. To get us started, I was wondering if you can tell me a bit about your career, why you chose athletic administration ultimately, and then what's so special about Gonzaga University that you've been there, I think, almost 25 years?
Well, yeah, thank you again for having me on. And again, look forward to discussing with you and all your listeners / viewers, everything from that standpoint. And a lot of what, we'll talk about today is just going to be my opinion on stuff. Yeah, I've been around a while. So just, that doesn't mean I'm an expert at anything. It just means I'm a survivor, I guess, in some ways. But yeah, I was a college basketball player and was one of those when I was done playing, it was, what am I going to do? And I had a former coach who said, hey, why don't you come be my assistant? And I did that. First 3 years, it was at the junior college level. I did that for 3 years, never got paid. So it's one of the ways you break into college athletics is you volunteer, you do an internship, you do a graduate assistantship, whatever might be the case. So I had the opportunity to go to Gonzaga at that time to work on my master's degree and was the graduate assistant coach at that time. Now they paid me there. I got paid $200 a month to be the graduate assistant at Gonzaga. My rent was $187 a month, by the way. But got to coach the 1 year there. That's when we had a little guard that ended up playing a couple of years in the NBA, maybe a couple of Olympics. I don't know. What was his name again? Stockton. That's right. John Stockton. So I was on the staff when Johnny played for us. And that was a great experience. And I never say I coached John, by the way. I always say I was on staff. Because I would never want to take credit for anything as good as John, turned out to be, that I had anything to do with that. So, but after coaching for, I don't know, 7 or 8 years, whatever it was, that I had an opportunity to move into administration at Gonzaga and took that opportunity and spent a few years as assistant AD running a whole bunch of different things. We were really small then and really unknown. And then, it was summer of 1997 is when I took over as AD, and they haven't been able to get rid of me yet. So it's been, Gonzaga is a special place, but we hear that about every school that people are at. It's true that every place is special, or we are different in that way. But one of the reasons that I've stayed so long, Coach Few stayed so long, and you look around our staff, we have a lot of long-term people, is that we believe in the place, and we believe that we can, do things. And again, you go back 25 years ago, no one would believe that we could be on our 23rd straight NCAA tournament qualified. We count last year because we qualified for the tournament. So 23 straight. And now we're into 6 straight Sweet 16s or better. The only school in the country right now that's got that active streak. And we sat all year with the number 1 team in the country, which haven't been done for, 6 or 7 years. And yeah, we're undefeated right now. And I see see all the logos there, right there. We're here in the state, and I don't think it's like the Miami Dolphins and that. I haven't heard any rumblings of anybody complaining, but again, we have to win. We have to win on Sunday before we can worry about that. But it's been a great experience. Learned a lot over the years, and and experienced a lot. And again, we do believe that we've created something that really hasn't ever been done before.
Yeah, and for those listening to the audio, not the video, he's talking about my IU piggy bank and my IU stuff in the background. So chance to be the net, it's been a long time since there've been an undefeated team make it all the way and win the championship. So like I said, we're recording this ahead of the Sweet 16. So hopefully I'm definitely rooting for Gonzaga to get through the tournament. And I have a little different background of John Stockton. Once he was in the NBA, was one of my favorite players to watch when I was a kid. Him and Karl Malone, it was amazing to watch. The games against Jordan, all that stuff. What is interesting for me, which I don't share a lot about on my podcast, is I'm actually a type 1 diabetic. So I knew Adam Morrison's career when he was at Gonzaga, and that was featured. And so that's when I started paying attention to Gonzaga more. And then everyone knows what a success story it's been now. But it reminds me a lot. You talked about it being a special place. I spent my internship, and then I was a assistant AD for 3 years at University of Indianapolis, which institutional profile, size, and type of institution very comparable to Gonzaga at the D2 level here in Indianapolis. So those types of schools that you're at, you're right, it is special. I mean, it's not the bigger schools can't be special too, but you typically see staff. Obviously, I didn't stay there that as long, but when I was an intern, 7 years later, I come back, almost everyone was still there, and the athletic director, Dr. Sue Willie, had just retired. So it's not surprising that you've been there that long, because if you find a good place and you love it, it's not hard. It's actually hard to leave. I mean, I left mainly to do the doctoral program at IU and for the tuition benefit, and I'm an IU alum. But I'd be lying if I said I don't miss my smaller school days sometimes.
Yeah.
Well, I want to talk about growth though. So I'm going to throw some stats out. In 1999 versus 2019, so your Gonzaga's website, the admissions page, I believe, has stats on here. This is the growth in 20 years. On-campus residents went from 1,600 to just under 3,000. Employees went from 836 to 1,350, and almost doubled the faculty size. And then these are the numbers that are pretty incredible to me. University budget went from 73 million to 323 million. The endowment went from 94 million to 309 million, and the enrollment of the institution went from 4,400 to 7,500. In 20 years, whenever we're in a time where for the last decade, smaller private institutions have struggled to even keep their numbers balanced. At what point and for what purpose did the university administration, because I know you were there at the time, decide to invest so much in basketball? What was the purpose too?
Well, it didn't happen overnight by any stretch. Our story is documented that it was the summer of '98 that our numbers were incredibly low, enrollment wise, revenues wise, endowment, fundraising, everything. And in that summer, we were in such dire straits as university budget wise that we went through a horrendous budget process of basically opening the books, and everybody got to comment on everybody's budget. Well, at that point, athletics had a giant bullseye on us. And I spent that whole summer fighting off dropping from Division I, to be quite honest with you. And we were able to stave that off. We had to take some cuts and everything else, but we were able to make those cuts without causing too much damage. One of the things that we fought off was they wanted to eliminate, one of the assistant basketball coaches, as an example. As I pointed out, when we beat Stanford in the tournament that year, when we beat Florida, the person doing the scout was the position they wanted to eliminate. But what was great about it too was then that spring of '99, we make the run to the Elite Eight. After beating Florida in the Sweet 16 game, I get a phone call from the university's controller, the university CFO, basically, and to tell me I get it. He literally said, "I get it now." Because I'd been telling him for a while that, look, the difference between Division I and Division II or Division III is exposure. And you can be the national champion in Division II or III, and nobody outside of your campus really is going to know much about it. You become nationally competitive in Division I, and guess what? You're going to really, you're really going to be on a national stage, and we proved that, and it changed the university almost instantly. We became known throughout the country, and all kinds of things changed at that point in time. But as far as the university really investing in us at that point, man, yes and no. I mean, yes, on a really small scale. We made, before months left for Minnesota, we made him the highest paid coach in the year in the league. Guess what? Mark gets paid the same amount that Muntz was getting paid. Mark gets paid that about a week right now. I mean, the scales have completely changed, and some of that is because we've been able to generate that revenue. But yeah, we got buy-in from the university. People think we built our new building, right away. Well, no, it took us 4 years to convince the trustees and the president to allow us to go out and build the building. They didn't believe we could sell tickets. They didn't believe we could get people in the building. And we've sold out every game we've ever had in that building. We charge crazy amounts of prices for people to be season ticket holders in that building. And basically what it comes down to is that, in the early years especially, we were able to take some risks to expand the program, to get better with men's basketball in particular, because we were kind of flying under the radar of, even within the university, of really intense look at what we do versus where we're at today. But the dollars were significantly different. We were dealing with nickels and dimes in 99 and 2000, 2001, as compared to, multiple big dollars that we're dealing with today. But the numbers that you just talked about show the impact that athletics can have on a university. Is, and again, whatever we want to call it, it affects, and especially private schools, it clearly shows the effect, because you don't have that state affiliation. And you look at where our students come from now, and why they come to Gonzaga. And yet at the same time, the one thing that people have to realize is, because more people want to come to Gonzaga, we can be more selective academically. So our academic profile of our institution, not just the numbers, money coming in or students coming, we have a higher rate. The level of our students academically that are arriving are highest ever. It's crazy how good the students are that come. We have alums say all the time, I couldn't get into school now. I wouldn't be able to go to Gonzaga now. So athletics in high profile sports, whether it be college football or college men's basketball in particular, can float the university's boat.
Yeah, some of those numbers was actually something I wrote down too that was interesting. Is 53% of Gonzaga students are from out of state, and 83% of all students are from over 200 miles away. And so I'm not sure, what those stats were 20 years ago. This was from 2019, but I'm guessing basketball had a little bit to do with that growth.
Well, for sure.
I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it was the story is in spring of '99. By spring of '99, we had never had a student even apply for admission to Gonzaga from a couple of the New England states, as an example. Never even had an application. And then all of a sudden we're getting people to attend from some of the New England states, and now every state, across the globe coming to Gonzaga. What changed? One thing changed: Gonzaga men's basketball.
Well, you talked about how, and I didn't realize that I guess it makes sense that you were having a fight to try and stay Division I at the very beginning. But, I did a little bit of research in the past that looked at like the smaller D2 and D3 institutions that are the private schools in D2 and D3. Notice that, an institutional strategy can be to increase your sport offerings, have, 25 to 35 sports, and get your number of student athletes significantly high to help fill or maintain enrollment. Gonzaga, was that part of the strategy if they went D2 to also increase sports? Because you could use that as a way to help enrollment because obviously athletes have better retention and they have a reason they're part of a team, they're going to stick around more. Was that part of the strategy or thinking of, well, if we could go D2, or was it strictly just a financial decision?
It was strictly just financial. There was no consideration. We actually, a couple different times over the years, we have promoted the thought of, look, give us some scholarships in our sports that are not headcount sports. Men's soccer is an example, women's soccer, baseball, and we'll make sure we bring in more students because we can take that one scholarship, spread it out amongst 4 players, and they're paying partial. That did not float. that did not work. That wasn't bought into. So no, the model that you see with Division III schools is an example of using college football as an enrollment piece, is not something that was ever considered at Gonzaga.
Well, I want to focus a little bit on basketball success for both men's and women's. So, the focus is typically on the men's basketball success, but the women's basketball team, 23-4 this season, had another incredible year, winning the conference title again, 5 seed. I talked about how I was a little nervous that we were potentially going to play you all in the second round. Things didn't go the way you wanted, but it was still a great year, especially after last season also being a great year and then not having the tournament. Is that success in women's basketball a result of the shared resources that are going to both men's and women's basketball? We're talking about the facility and all of that, because I don't see all that often a men's and women's team, the same sport, being so dominant like Gonzaga has been for the last 20 years.
Yeah, I mean, there's 2 pieces to it. Or multiple pieces to it, I guess. First, again, men's basketball success has helped our women's basketball success, just as men's basketball success has helped our baseball success and our soccer success and tennis and golf, everything. That you take your marquee sport and you make it successful, it'll float all boats, as I said earlier. So, that's the first piece. And there were a couple things that transpired along the way. When we built McCarthy Athletic Center, one of the things that right away we sold out every season ticket. We sold out before we ever opened the building, and we don't sell tickets to the public. We have season ticket holders and students, and that's it. And if you're not a student and you're not a season ticket holder, you don't get to come see us play. Well, when we opened the building in 2004, people wanted to even see the building. So what did they do? They bought tickets to women's basketball. And we were already at that point pretty darn good in women's basketball. People realized, wow, this is kind of cool. We also, because we're sold out, we were able to then target our marketing to women's basketball. Instead of worrying about trying to market men's basketball, we were just marketing women's basketball and driving people to it. And then we looked at the demographics too. And okay, what are we focused on? Women's basketball was a lot more affordable than men's basketball from a season ticket standpoint. And so we started focusing on the demographics there. And we have, as a lot of people do with, their women's, popular women's basketball programs around the country, we have young families that come to games, especially those with daughters. And then we have retired people that come to games. And it's a great mix, to be quite honest with you. And we've been, this year, of course, nobody had anybody at games, but in the last, 8-10 years, we've led the country in attendance per capacity for women's basketball. We don't lead in attendance because our building's not as big as Tennessees or some of the others. But per capacity, we're right there at the top, if not number one, each and every year. And then the other things we have done is kind of, I mean, I don't want to poke holes, but it's been very, very well publicized of the difference between men's here in Indianapolis and the women in San Antonio. Our women, of course, were in San Antonio, so I got firsthand information from our staff and our administrators and our senior associate AD and associate AD that were with them there. And there are definitely differences there. Well, we work and have always worked really hard to make sure there's no differences. Mark's office and Lisa's office are back to back and identical, other than the furnishings, that how they have them decorated. Their locker rooms, as I like to say, the difference between the locker rooms, other than how they've designed them, is the men have urinals and the women have individual shower stalls. Well, now the men even have individual shower stalls. They both fly on the same charter aircraft to every game. And that's, to be honest with you, that doesn't happen everywhere. And so we're very, very aware that we have a great women's basketball program. Let's continue to make it better and do the right things in the process. So, but it all started with men's basketball. And as we got, and then we took advantage of, we talked about John Stockton. Well, how about Courtney Vandersloot? Courtney Vandersloot, who is a all-star first team, all WNBA, is, our all-time leading assists at Gonzaga, was the first player in men's and women's basketball history to have over 2,000 points and over 1,000 assists. No one had ever done that before. And, she really helped move the needle with our women's basketball team and continues to, because of her success professionally. And we've been able to continue to build on that, but it's not by accident, and it's not easy, because if it was, other people would be doing it. It takes, you got to focus on it. You got to work at it.
Yeah, the intentionality is definitely there for you all. I wonder what it would take. Obviously, a significant investment will probably come out of this with some schools where it's not the same for the men and women on a campus, where they have to really start looking at that. And if anything, maybe the San Antonio will change that at individual campuses too. At IU, they both use Cook Hall. They both play in Assembly Hall. They both have amazing facilities, and that's a big part, I'm sure, of why our women's basketball team under Coach Warren is so successful. And it's been fun to watch our women's success. But like I said, I mean, we talked about outside of Baylor, there's not really a lot that have had the same success. I think in 2 years. So if I don't know the exact records, but I think in 2 years between both teams, you probably won like 95 out of 100 games or something like that. That'd be probably a close estimate, you think?
Oh, yeah.
It's crazy. It's very impressive. So it's great to hear the intentionality behind that. Well, there's a new book, which I'm sure you're aware of, and I had told you about that. I picked it up, called The Cinderella Strategy. It's a new book about Butler specifically, but Gonzaga is profiled in it. And it talks about a lot of what you also did about changing athletic programs, logos and colors, scheduled more high profile opponents for the basketball team, which we kind of talked about. And most importantly, used a big part of the budget to purchase regional television coverage for the team. It's said that was all the case. Was that part of the strategy? And then can you expand on, is that possible still today with the streaming and conference realignment, things like that? Can it still be done?
I mean, Travis, there's, I get these kind of questions all the time. And it's interesting because I do have sitting on my table in my office back in Spokane is a copy of the book that you just mentioned. I can't remember now the name of the author, and I apologize, but he did talk with me as he was writing, and then he just before we left for Indy, he sent me a copy of the book, and I unfortunately left it sitting on my table there. I could be reading it while I'm sitting here in the bubble. But there was a number of things that transpired over time that were very intentional on our part, and the first one was there. I guess they both came about at the same time. One was the TV thing that you talked about. We realized that we're recruiting 17-year-olds, basically 17, 18-year-olds at that time. Now you're recruiting them even younger than that, but in those days we were recruiting 17, 18-year-olds, and we're not going to get enough good players out of Spokane to make it work. I mean, there's been Johnny drafted and Adam drafted out of Spokane. There's not been a lot of NBA players coming out of Spokane, and not a lot of superstar basketball players out of Spokane. And so one of the things that we talked about was, okay, how do we do that? Well, we got to make sure people get seen. That their parents can watch them, their family and friends can watch them. And in those days, you look back on our 99 team, our 2000 team, 2001, 2002, they're all local. They're all within the Northwest. Richie Fromm was from the state of Washington, and Matt Santangelo from Portland, Dan Dickow from Vancouver, Washington, Corey Violet from Boise, Idaho, Blake Stepp from Eugene, Oregon. I mean, our core great players in those days were from the Northwest. And so we bought our way on what was then, Prime Sports Northwest. It later on became Fox Sports Northwest, which is now Root Sports. We actually bought our way on. We set aside, and we were paying about $25,000 a game, and we figured it out. We just dug into the budget and said, look, we didn't get any extra money from anybody. It was, let's just not spend this money over here a couple different ways, not all from one pot, but just what if we took 10,000 out of this pot, and 20 out of this pot, and 20 over here, and we bought 5 games those first couple of years on Fox, on Prime Sports, which is now Fox Sports Northwest, or which is now Root, and we bought our way on TV, and that helped, because that helped us be able to tell Casey Calvary, who tipped in the shot against Florida, that, hey, you're from Tacoma, your parents are going to be able to watch these games without having to drive over the mountains. And so that was one of the first steps we took. And of course, that wasn't, but then a few years later, as we continued to build, that we were able to get the games on for free. And then 3 years later, all of a sudden, we were able to explain to our TV partners that, I think it's time for us to start receiving money. And so, we were able to develop, and still today, I do believe, and I've been told this by others, that we have the best non-football TV deal in the country. And again, we've earned that from that standpoint. But we made other, really conscious decisions. We changed in the summer of '98, same time when we were going through this budget process and everything else. I'd been the AD for 1 year at that point in time. We decided we needed to change who we were from a perception standpoint. We needed to change our own perceptions internally, but we also needed to make very visual changes. So we changed our logo. We changed our color. We were a lighter blue. Now we're a navy blue. Let's see if I get that on there. We threw it. We got we changed our logo to something that was what we believed was attractive, when what we had before really wasn't attractive. Who's going to want to wear that on a hat or a shirt type of thing? And so we changed those things very, very consciously, again, to make them happen. And again, this was at a time where summer of '98, nobody was paying attention. I mean, we didn't have to run that up the flagpole, oh, well, we got to get, authority from the board of trustees so to be able to change the logo. We just changed it. We didn't ask for permission. We didn't even ask for forgiveness. We just did it. And, now if we were to do something like that, oh my gosh, we'd probably have to go to the Vatican to get approval to change the logo now. But, it's the one thing that I think there's always going to be a perception by some people outside the business that some of these things just happen by accident. They didn't. These things didn't happen by accident. And people will say that we got lucky, and they're absolutely right. Because we could have bought our way on TV, we could have changed the logos, we could have kept the staff, we could have done all these different pieces and invested in the program. And if we had not won games, it wouldn't have meant anything. You and I would not be talking today because you have to win the games. And now, it was interesting because we had one of our longtime team doctors who's now since retired, Arnie. He told me early on, it was maybe 2000, 2001, we're early on in the streak. And I asked him, or he came up to me after the season, Mike, great job and everything. And I said, well, Arn, I'm just lucky. I appreciate it, but I'm just really lucky. And he goes, yes, you are. He said, but let's remember the definition of luck. Luck is when preparation meets opportunity. And I've never forgot that because he is absolutely right. We consciously said, we're going to make changes. We consciously said, we're going to do things. And we're not just going to say, okay, we're not going to just roll over and assume that we can't do something. And yet, still at the end, the opportunities to present itself. You go out and you win the games because you positioned yourself to win the games. The other thing I tell young people all the time, especially maybe this generation of young people that sometimes are struggling over what should I do, and and people get risk averse, in life a little bit. And I'm not a huge risk taker, other than my job has been predicated on decisions that 18 to 22-year-olds make for my whole career. And so talk about risk, holy fluff. But, what I tell people, though, is that you don't win any games unless you put yourself at risk of losing. We're sitting here, whatever our record is right now, 20-something-0, going into the Sweet 16. Okay, if we don't play anymore, we're going to end the year undefeated. If we just walk away and say we're right? It doesn't work that way. You put yourself at risk. It's the only way you can win. And I think there's people out there that aren't willing to put, the right risks on the line. Now, foolish risks are foolish. You don't want to do that. And there's certain risks that we, Gonzaga, will not and have not taken. And, one is in character is a big piece of that. We have great character amongst our student athletes, our staff, our coaches. That's what moves the needle. It's not just, people have asked me, well, what do you look for when you're hiring a coach? And I've had this question asked by our trustees 20 some years ago. It was the first time they asked me that question. I told them, I'm looking for the best person for Gonzaga University, not the best coach. And if they're the best person for Gonzaga, they will end up being the best coach for us. But they have to check the box of being the best person first. That's more important than being the best coach. You can bring in, there's examples out there of great college basketball, football coaches, basketball coaches, baseball. It doesn't matter the sport. I'm a basketball guy, so I can name some really big time great coaches in the history of the game. But they would never fit at our place because their character didn't meet our character of who we are and what we stand for. at Gonzaga. And that's what makes it so special is we've been able to show at Gonzaga that you can win. You can be the number one ranked team in the country. You can be the number one seed. We've been, 6 straight Sweet 16s, a championship game, all these things. We are a blue blood of college basketball, and every senior graduates. And we lead, we're in the top 5, if not number 1 in the country each and every year in graduation success rate in APR. We're showing you can do both. We're showing that you can be a student athlete and still be on the best team in the country. And not walk-ons. Corey Kispert's the best player on the best team in the country right now. He should be named the player of the year in the country. Now Garza's probably going to get it, but Corey deserves it. He's the best player on the best team in the country. He's already first team All-American. When the academic All-American status comes out, he'll be first team academic All-American. He graduated from our School of Business in 3 years. He'll be at first team, and guess what? It's not our first time. Gonzaga, we have had, if you look at men's college basketball over the last 20 years, there have been up to now, there's been 5 instances of a player that was named first team All-American, top 5 player in the country, one of the top 5 players in the country. At the same year, they were named first team academic All-American. There's only 5 of those first team academic All-Americans. By the way, Domantas Sabonis was second team academic All-American his sophomore year before he left for the NBA, is an example. But those 5 players include DJ Augustine from Texas, Amika Okafor from UConn, and then Dan Dickow, Gonzaga University. Kelly Olynyk, Gonzaga University. Nigel Williams-Goss, Gonzaga University. And this year, unless something unbelievable happens, it'll be Corey Kispert to make it 4 out of 6. That's it. Nobody else. I'm sorry, but Indiana doesn't have one. Duke doesn't have one in the last 20 years. Nobody else has one. So that's one of the things we've been able to show is that who we are. We can show that you can win with great coaches who are great people. You can win with great players who are great people. You can win with kids that go to class and graduate. Now, again, we're not, is Domantas graduated yet? Not yet. He can, and he probably will someday. But right now, when he left Gonzaga as a second team academic All-American. It wasn't like he didn't go to class. So, those are the special things. So sorry I went off on a tangent there, Travis. That's a part that I really think that people miss out on because they just see the success on the floor and they don't understand that what also makes Gonzaga different and special is that we get it done off the floor. So
when I was at University of Indianapolis and still big role of mine at IU is academics. So I appreciate that part of it. Sabonis is one of my favorite Pacers to watch here in Indianapolis. So it's always good to hear about him too. It's just, it is true that you all have had incredible academic success too. And I didn't realize that about 4 of the 6. That's quite a feat. And so congrats on that. I'm kind of curious about going back to a little bit about that, about how you had your television rights and everything like that. Do you think if you had to do it over again now, is it harder for an athletic director in an individual institution with the way everything's being streamed and conferences basically do the contracts as a league? Everyone could be on the ESPN app. Does that crowd the market to the point where if you catch, a streak, say you're in the Horizon League and you're, having a great run, but all your games are on ESPN the same time as everyone else's and streaming, Does that make it harder to capitalize whenever it's now that it's all conference wide?
Yeah, I appreciate getting me back on track there, Travis. Yeah, I think it does. I think that, when we were buying our way on, there weren't as many college basketball games to watch. And now, like you said, December, January, February, there's, you can have how many screens going and have how many games going. And is the technology continues to get better. People and people of your generation and younger for sure, or that's how they consume it. People my generation, how do they consume sports? They go to ESPN. You tell them, well, what about going to FS1? They're like, FS what? Right? So there's a generational gap there, of course. But as far as that goes, yeah. So what we used to get this started is not what somebody would use today, in my opinion, at least not all of it. There's pieces of it, absolutely. And one of those pieces is you need to make sure that you've changed your internal mindset to be able to change the external mindset. The other thing is you want to be careful you don't get out over the head, don't get out over your skis. You mentioned our women's basketball program. Again, we are really, we're a nationally recognized women's basketball program. We spent the whole year ranked in the top 20 this whole year. Last year, the same. It's not a fluke, we've been doing this for a while in women's basketball. However, if you go back to 99, 2000, we were god awful in women's basketball. We were last in our league. We were horrible. And we had to make a coaching change. And brought Kelly Graves in, who's now the coach at Oregon, doing a fantastic job there. And would have, talk about a heartbreak. They had the best team in the country with the best player in the country last year, and they didn't get to play. And, the top 5 picks in the WNBA draft, Oregon had 3 of the top 5 picks in the WNBA draft last year. So it's a heartbreaker for Kelly that they didn't get to play that last year. But I remember early on in Kelly's tenure, and this wasn't his fault, because I told him, look, we're not the type of place, yes, you're coming in as a new coach, but you get to inherit the players. I'm sorry. We're not going to I can't let you run the players out. It's not their fault they're not good enough. It's the coach's fault for recruiting, the previous coach's fault for recruiting kids are not good enough. So his first 2 years at Gonzaga were painful because he wasn't able to play with his own players. But he used to come in my office all the time and say, Mike, we got to get people to come to our games. What can we do? We got to encourage people to come to our games. And I would tell him, no, we don't. We don't want anybody to come to our games right now. Kelly, we're god awful, right? And he goes, oh yeah. I said, we don't want people to come in and experience that, because what's the first impression? The first impression is, whoa, they're not very good. And it's going to take us quite a while then to overcome that, if that's their first impression. And I made him a promise. I said, look, you get us good enough on the floor and we'll fill the building. And that's what we did. And so to me, I talk about, little sayings all the time, cart before the horse, or the chicken and the egg, which one came first, all those things. Well, in my opinion, promoting your sport, and whatever it is, in this case, it was women's basketball. The same holds true with men's basketball. You need to, it's not a chicken and egg thing. It's a cart and horse thing. The horse has to pull that cart. And in this case, you got to win. If you start winning, if we had bought our way on TV when we weren't very good years before in college basketball, what would have happened?
Bad investment.
Yeah. And so it's the same kind of thing, you've got to, and so as an athletic director, or as the president of the university athletic director, or if you want to get the real food chain, the trustees, the president and the athletic director, if you all get on the same page of, okay, we want to become Gonzaga. Okay. And last year we had, 2 summers ago, I had the chairman of the board of trustees, the president, and the AD of school that's in the tournament right now, still in the Sweet 16, come fly out and spent all day with me to, find out what the secret sauce is.
Can I guess the school?
No, you can't.
I'm
It's on a
just
pop.
kidding.
But they came out to meet with me to talk about how do you do this? How do you get it going? How do you sustain it? And the key there is you got to win. Well, how do you win? You got to have the right people, and that actually includes those three that I just talked about. If you don't have the right, if the board doesn't support it, it's going to be tough. If the president doesn't support it, it'll be tough. And if the AD doesn't know what the hell they're doing, it's going to be really tough. It doesn't matter how good the coach is, but the next piece of that puzzle, which is the key, is that coach. You've got to make sure you have that right coach. And then to be honest with you, people say, well, then you got to give them resources. Yeah, but it's not unlimited resources to start with. People presume that 99, we go to the Elite Eight, and then the next year, the university just opened up their pocketbook and let us spend money like a drunken sailor. Our budget didn't change. We didn't get $1 more in 2000 in the budget, or 2001 in the budget. I mean, we started to generate more revenue for ourselves that we could spend, but we weren't getting any additional dollars at that point. People were still wondering if we had just caught lightning in the bottle. And so you need to win, and then you can start to ask for resources. You need to win, and then you can promote your program. You need to win, and then you can build new buildings or whatever might be the case that's going to move the needle. And right now, the TV thing is different. Now don't get me wrong. If you reach a certain level, a Gonzaga level, a Kentucky level, a Kansas level, a Duke level, guess what? How many games were we on ESPN this year? A bunch, right? Why? Because they want us on. and now, it's the thing that the schools that are chasing us or hope to chase us complain about, but it's what makes America great, in my opinion, too, is the rich do get richer. That if you work hard and you earn that opportunity, then you get more opportunities because you worked hard. Nobody gave it to you. It's not a welfare state. Nobody gave us anything. We earned it. And then ESPN puts us on. ESPN, why? Because viewers want to see this. And it's going to continue to build. And then why do you end up with the Jalen Suggs and the Julian Fathers of the world, wanting to, be at Gonzaga? Why wouldn't you? When you watch the profiles on ESPN and all these other things, and streaming's great, but everybody gets streamed. But who gets the games on ESPN? Who gets the games on? Look at the tournament right now. The tournament, especially the round of 32. 64, if you look over the years, 64, not a lot of 1 seeds play on CBS. They like that 8-9 game. They want to make sure that CBS is getting to broadcast the games. It could be close, the 7-10s, those games. Anything that is going to be more intense in that round of 64. But then you get to the round of 32, and all of a sudden now the number ones are on CBS. And people think, well, they've lined that out a month ago. They don't make that decision until the games are over. So they didn't decide what games were on CBS versus Turner, et cetera, until after the games. We didn't know what channel we were going to be on until the next day. And so that drives that for you, but it all comes back to, you need to make good, solid decisions, but you still have to win games. And if you win games, your decisions become viewed as the right decisions. But at the same time, you can only win games if you have a great coach who has great players. I mean, Mark Few is going to be a Hall of Fame coach. I mean, you look at it, it's mind-boggling when you look at his records. People, again, why is he still at Gonzaga? Well, we're showing it again this year. Why is he still at Gonzaga? People have asked me, why did you stay at Gonzaga so long? Well, why would I go someplace else? We can be the number one team in the country at Gonzaga. So why would I go to another school? And in Mark's case, it's the same thing. Plus, Mark gets compensated at that same level. He's not, it's not like he's underpaid. Well, he is underpaid, but every coach that wins at his level is technically underpaid in some ways. But we believe we can do it at Gonzaga. But still, at the end of the day, doesn't matter how good a coach you are or how good of athletic director you are. If you don't have the people in place, you can't make chicken salad out of chicken poop. You need to have, as an AD, you need to have good coaches. As a coach, you need to have good players. And that's all part of the formula.
Well, that really helps me, because just to wrap it up, my thoughts as far as, the winning needs to come first, and have I think it's great that you focused on that so much, because I'm studying branding right now in my doctoral program. And it's an area that I'll probably spend some research on in my program. But I think it's pointless to do a rebrand of your athletic department if you're horrible. Not to be mean, but like, if you're not good in any of your sports, let alone your profile, your marquee sports, then what are you doing? Because like you just talked about, I think your women's basketball example was huge. Of you win, and then people will come, and then they'll see that we're a winning program, and then the resources will come. And I think a lot of times right now, the schools I've looked at, that maybe the branding's coming a little too early, thinking that, well, if we rebrand, we're going to get recruits and we're going to be good. Well, I think if you can have a cool uniform, but pretty much everyone has an apparel deal that they have some good apparel right now. So I don't think that's the biggest problem. And you all did rebrand, but you were also, is kind of at the same time that you were turning things around. So Mike, I just want to thank you for being on the podcast. I as much as I love the fact that IU is that one undefeated team that won the national championship in modern, but I really am rooting for you all. I've watched Gonzaga a lot. I've talked about Adam Morrison, and just knowing that Gonzaga is so good at basketball, and then hearing now how much you guys have all done it the right way, just makes me a fan. So I hope by the time this airs, I hope you're a national champion program, and you all get that checked off the list.
Well, I appreciate that, Travis, and I hope so too. But if not, it's still been a great run, and will continue to be. We're not satisfied. We're going to keep working it. So thank you very much for allowing me to join you today, and good luck with your doctoral program. And don't hesitate to reach out on that branding thing, because we really believe that it's a really important part, but you have to get them in the right steps. So